Welcome, everybody, and thank you for attending this Lunch and Learn session organised in collaboration between the Knowledge and Library Services at NCIC and CLIC, the Cumbria Learning and Improvement Collaborative. My name is Ashley and I am from the CLIC team, and today we are joined by Forrest, who is the People Promise Manager at NCIC. And Anne is going to be talking today about staff retention and the NHS People Promise. If you could hit the next slide for me, Anne, that would be wonderful. So these lunch and learn sessions are designed to be a relaxed and informal space for health and social care staff to come together and share their experiences. Next slide, please, Anne. Thank you. And now, before we kick off, just some quick protocols. So please mute yourselves when you're not speaking. Feel free to post any questions in the chat as we go along, but we will also have some time for questions at the end as well. Please listen with respect and be present, and pass on, share the learning that you gain from today, and please spread the word about these sessions as well. And also please be aware that we are recording today's session. I will post a link to the feedback in the chat shortly. So if you could please complete that, that would be much appreciated. It's very short, just a couple of questions. And now I will hand over to the lovely Anne.
Hi, as you can see here, my name's Forrest. I think I've met many people, but for those who haven't met me, I'm the People Promise Manager here at NCIC, and as part of the session today, I'm going to try and explain how important the NHS People Promises are and how they connect to staff retention. And when I talk about staff retention, I really want to focus on enabling our staff to really want to stay working in the NHS and ideally here at NCIC healthier for longer. So it's that they're in a positive place as opposed to just staying, for keeping people here. So for those that haven't heard about the 7 People Promises, you can see them behind me, but also on the screen. And these are things that colleagues like you and I up and down the country have said are really important in order to stay healthy in work, in order to really improve our experiences at work. So we continue to enjoy our jobs in the NHS and therefore we will want to stay working for longer. And they probably won't be rocket science to you. They are quite obvious things, but they are really, really important. And often it's those small things that make a big difference, whether it be, just saying thank you at the end of the day when you've worked alongside somebody, which would come under recognition and reward, or really making sure that you have opportunities to have a break or stay hydrated. So the 7 People Promises you can see there in front of you, and they range from we are compassionate and inclusive, which really focuses on the culture and how we all want to come to work and feel safe to be who we are and to be our real authentic selves, and that we're treated in a way that reflects our NCIC values and the values of other organisations across our place. We're recognised and rewarded. And I mentioned just a thank you. It could be anything from the way we're paid, our salaries, our pensions, but also each and every one of us can live these promises through the way we work alongside our colleagues. A really important one is that we each have a voice that counts, and that when we share our thoughts and ideas, that those voices and those ideas are listened to, and that counts, and we make sure we hear and create the conditions where everyone's voice is heard. Often those people from groups from seldom heard voices are not heard and can't impact the culture, and we really do need to go that extra mile to make sure everybody's voice counts. we're safe and healthy, we work, and we often our roles are to look after other people, and therefore when we talk about actually our health and well-being, it's not something that's obvious to us. And I think during the pandemic, research showed that leaders were often the people that forgot to put the gas mask on themselves and to look after their health and well-being. And that is so important, that we can't actually support others until we are really role modelling those health and well-being good practices and supporting then you've got that energy to support others. We're always learning, and therefore everything from the obvious things like a formal qualification through an apprenticeship uh, standard, but also it could be shadowing people, it could be reading an article, it could be coming on a lunch and learn session. But also this does really connect to culture. Do we work in a culture where we have a learning culture, where we look for opportunities to learn from mistakes rather than look to blame somebody when there is a mistake that happens? So really creating a culture where we are constantly reflecting and learning on how we can improve. We're flexible, and we've got some work going on at the moment, really focusing on flexibility. Flexibility is a key promise for the NHS in order to retain our staff, particularly when we look at the generations of our workforce. And I get confused on all the different generations, but particularly I think it's Generation Z that really want that flexibility. But I think it's all our lives need to get that balance and get that healthy work-life balance. And we are a team, and in the links at the end, I've put a link to a video where they describe this really well. They describe the NHS as being one huge, diverse team that we should celebrate and embrace and really enhance and embrace all those opportunities that we have when we come together as a complete team. So that's just to skip through what our 7 people promises are. Now, I want to just focus on 3 main areas of work that we've been looking at as a trust. The first one is, how can we make NCIC a great place to work? Now, when we go through the 3 areas of focused work, I don't want it to be implied that that's all the work that's going on, because there's a heck of a lot of work going on right across the trust. But I just wanted to showcase some of the specific pieces of work that are going on, and to remind ourselves that actually these all tie back to creating the best possible employee experience so people want to continue to work here. So creating the opportunities for NCIC to be a great place to work. And I'm going to start with exit questionnaires, and many of you on the call have probably heard me talk about this, and this might feel counterintuitive. Why do we start when people are leaving, when actually we're talking about staff retention? But if we are to be respectful and to give people a voice that counts and to really learn from people, we must be open to that feedback when people are either considering leaving the trust or actually leaving the trust. So we've done a lot of work on our exit questionnaires, and this new way of working is due to go live next month, and we'll be launching this through a series of learning events. The first main change that has happened in this space is that we have created the expectation that leaders and the person who's considering leaving will have a stay conversation. That might sound obvious, but that wasn't something that was in our current policy. To explore opportunities to improve their experiences at work so they may consider staying. And then the other ways that we've improved the policy is by changing the way that we capture information when people are leaving, so it's much more automated and easy for people to complete the questionnaire. But the questions are based on evidence-based questions based on questions that we know are really important and make up a positive staff experience. And the mock-up that you can see there of the dashboard is going to be, when it's launched next month, the first that I'm aware of, people-focused qualitative dashboard. We've got a lot of dashboards that look at metrics and how many people have completed an appraisal or their sickness and things, but we're really focusing in on the experience and the quality of that experience. And the final change is to take that feedback and make it count. Using the information on that dashboard, there'll be that expectation that our services and our care groups will actually look at making improvements to the way they support people in work. So that's quite a big piece of work that's coming to fruition and is due to go live next month. The second piece of work in this area is career conversations, and this is being led by our learning development manager, Jane, and there is a focus group. There's 4 pilot groups that are really going to have opportunities to think about their careers and have some focused conversations about their careers. Where do they aspire to being in the future? What support can we provide for them in order to achieve their dream? And there's some key people that we want to support to have those conversations. Our overseas educated nurses, we really want to harness the skills and experience that those people are bringing to the trust. And our midwives, our HCAs, there's some dedicated workers in that team that are really looking at on the dementia ward and our HCAs. So that piece of work is going live at the moment, and we will evaluate how those pilots have gone with a view to scaling that offer up right across the trust. The final area on this, making NCIC a great place to work, is we are flexible. And I mentioned before, this is the #1 area that the NHS is really wanting to focus on. It's the area that often people say is the reason why they're leaving, through lack of flexibility. So there's quite a lot of work been going on. There's been a questionnaire going out, feedback on how well our policy is being delivered at the moment, and that's given us quite a lot of rich data. We are about to pilot on 2 wards self-rostering, using the rostering system that enables us to spread flexible working across into those clinical spaces. I think there's a misconception at the moment about flexible working being working at home. Actually, flexible working is far, far wider than that. It is about working at home, but it's also about compressed hours, it's about term time contracts, it's about self-rostering. So there's lots of work going on in that space, and we hope that we could see some positive changes over the next few weeks and months. So moving on, the next area of work was to really focus on our leaders, to really create the conditions where our leaders can be compassionate and inclusive in their leadership. I think it's fair to say that in the last survey and the survey before, that people were telling us that that wasn't always their lived experience at work. They weren't always fortunate enough to be led with compassion, and their leaders weren't always inclusive. So this was a really important area for us, and we worked with over 220 people at the Trust to create our leadership framework that you see in front of you there. What does that look like when we're leading with kindness, when we're leading with respect, when we're leading with ambition, and when we're leading with collaboration? Those have now been approved by the execs and are being rolled out across the Trust. And that gives us the firm foundation to be able to work from. We really want to really focus on that we are compassionate and inclusive, people promise, and really supporting our leaders to role model that is a key part of the success of that. By having the framework, it's enabled us to create values-based recruitment for all leadership roles. So what that means in reality is that when you're applying to be a leader at the trust, we're not only assessing you in relation to the skills that you have, but also your values. And that will be part of all future recruitment going forward. And the final area of work that is an ongoing piece of work, step 3, is to support our new leaders in the organisation so that they can feel confident and competent as quickly as possible, either when they're internally promoted within the trust or are recruited from outside of the trust. And they know what's expected of them when they're leading the NCIC way. So those are that's a summary of the work that we're doing and we're delivering in relation to creating the conditions for compassionate and inclusive leadership. The final area is we've got a voice that counts, and this is a really key part of what we are trying to build on, but also expanding that opportunity. So on the right, I think it's fair to say there's a massive amount of work that goes on when we're working alongside colleagues within our staff networks and creating the opportunities so we can ensure that our organisation is inclusive and that we have people have a voice that counts. And when we have that feedback, we make the improvements that people are telling us we need to make. So some of the key areas of work around that is we just met as staff network leads and staff network representatives in the ED&I steering group to tell us what our colleagues at NCIC are giving us feedback on through the National Staff Survey, but also through the other listening channels that we have available to us, and then listening to that feedback and making those improvements. On the left-hand side, these are things that are part of our plan going forward. So we have the National Staff Survey. That is something that we, I suppose, is a wealth of information and feedback for us to use to make improvements to employee experience. But it's a once in a year touch point. So what we recognise is that we want to make better use of the National Quarterly Pulse Survey. At the moment, we have that available to us, but it's not really been something we've pushed across the trust. Going forward, when the new collaboratives and the new structures are settled, this will be part of our more regular touch point listening channels. The reason we want to do that is because we want to know how people are feeling between those national staff surveys. We want to hear the voices of people when we're making change and to see whether that actually is achieving what we want to do. Building on the National Quarterly Pulse Survey are those local listening channels. And you can see here over the last few weeks and months since we've had the results of the National Staff Survey, I've been rolling out the People Improvement Toolkit and People Improvement Plans right across the trust and setting a clear expectation that every single team will sit down with people in their team and really put the mirror up to themselves as a team and say, how is our experience at work and what can we do together to improve our experiences at work, and together creating the people improvement plans for those teams. That's really important that we do that, because every year when we go back and we ask people again, how are they feeling? It's really important that we've taken action between asking those questions and people can start to see, yes, I had a voice, but it did count because these are the things that I can see that are happening. And they can see that at a local level, which is really, really important. The final thing that I want to say on this slide is that actually this is something that we need more and more people to sponsor and support. So we're going to create that network of People Promise ambassadors to really look at ways to embed the people promises and improve employee experience right across every team and services in the trust. And the People Promise ambassadors will work alongside our respect and inclusion ambassadors and complement the work that they do. So that's summary of We Have a Voice That Counts and the work that we've been doing there. Finally, I just wanted to share with you the retention plan on a page. We're really mindful that there is a huge amount of work going on at the Trust, and it's very, very difficult for us to remember as practitioners and people that are leading very busy lives to remember where everything is and what kinds of things are going on. So we've pulled this together as an easy to read and access guide for leaders if they're having a conversation with somebody, a stay conversation or a one-to-one or a appraisal, or within your team meetings. And it summarises all the work that's going on in relation to the 7 people promises. This first page focuses on all the interventions that are for everybody. And then the second page are those that are specific and bespoke to our clinical and medical workforce. So I'm going to finish with the final page, which is some resources that you might find useful, and I'm sure many of you have access to these. The final bullet on there is a video that I would encourage you all to watch if you haven't seen it. It articulates the 7 people promises far better than I could do within the time slot that we have available, and it just really brings it to life and amplifies the importance of the 7 people promises in all of our journeys at working in the NHS. So thank you for listening, and I'll hand back to Ashley.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Anne. That was fantastic and great to hear all of the work that's going on for staff. And as you say, making sure that they have that voice that counts is so important, definitely. Has anybody got any questions at all for Anne? I don't think there's been any posted in the chat as yet, but please feel free to come off mute and ask any questions that you might have. Hi, Anne.
There is one question, sorry, Nikki's put in, staff who are leaving feel better about exit questionnaires not being undertaken by managers. And absolutely, the new policy does allow that individual to ask for somebody other than their line manager to have the stay conversation. The exit questionnaire itself is done and it's anonymous. So the manager doesn't have to be part of the completion of that questionnaire, therefore allowing that person to feel free, hopefully, to be as honest as they possibly can. And I'm sorry, whoever I interrupted them.
Oh,
Thanks,
sorry, it was me. My name's Elizabeth, and I was just wondering how well established the plans are. You talked a lot about the voice that counts and collecting staff views, using the people pulse surveys, using exit questionnaires, that sort of thing. My experience since I joined the trust has been that I've been asked an awful lot to say what I think, and I've never heard any feedback about how it's been reviewed, ever. Not even an, oh, we think you've got off the wrong foot here. And we also recently discovered in our care group that there were several hundred exit questionnaires going back a long time that the managers involved said they'd never seen the content of, and they didn't even appear to have been screened for concerns about things as fundamental as fraud or patient safety. You know, we haven't even screened for have people left because they think their professional registration is at risk in this organisation. Now, I've been with the organisation for less than 2 years, so my perspective is a bit different, but I do worry that what I feel like in our team is that we've been asked to encourage staff to complete questionnaires anonymously or to give feedback really quite a lot, actually, more than I was used to in my previous organisation. But what I haven't heard is anything about what's happening to that data or any feedback coming down to people within the team that would allow us to act on it locally either. And I'm a bit worried that the feeling I get when I'm being asked to push these questionnaires is, yeah, we tell you, and then you just sit on it. It's like I think people are starting to feel like we're asking in the hope that their opinion will have changed rather than in the hope that we can do something about it. So I just wonder, you know, all these new initiatives, have we worked out before we start asking for the feedback how we're going to use it? Because I do worry a little bit about that side.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much for your question. And I think it's a really valid question. And I think it's often the part of making sure somebody's voice counts that is missed, closing that communication loop. And making sure that we tell that story over and over again so people can hear that. And when they're in a place to hear it, that information's ready for them. Yes, I think we won't always get it right, but absolutely. So with relation to the exit questionnaire, we appreciated, and I've been here only 11 months, so I can only go back a little while, but we appreciated the need to make some improvements. Hence, we are changing that so that those questionnaires are being delivered and collated on ESR, and the dashboard that you saw will be available on the workforce dashboards for our senior leaders and those that are responsible for making improvements to make those improvements. The local listening channels for me are going to be absolutely vital because we have lots of opportunities to speak up, but we need to then get that feedback and that immediate quick win and impact that that's having. And when I think that we're building those people improvement plans at team level and people are involved in the design of those and the implementation of those, that will not need to go up and down. That's something that people can create and make those improvements in that moment. And where they need support, then obviously that support needs to be found. So absolutely, yes, we do need to focus. We have focused, but I also think we need lots of people helping and supporting that feedback and that communication to flow backwards and forwards.
Brilliant. Thanks, Anne. I think we've got time for one more question, and Denise has popped her hand up. Denise, would you like to come and share?
Yeah, I was just going to sort of share about midwifery because I've been a midwife for too many years, 30 odd years. And I then became retention and recruitment lead for midwifery. And just to say about in response to your question about the exit interviews, it was something that I felt really needed to be done because there's no point in these people leaving if we don't take notice. So I have one-to-one interviews if the midwives want it. And I feed back to management. A lot of times people don't want things fed back, but they just want the opportunity to be able to talk and to be heard, and they don't actually want me to do anything with that information. So we're really lucky in midwifery from that point of view, but that's one way that we're doing it, that every person is having that opportunity of a one-to-one appointment as well as filling in the exit questionnaire. And that's because I've got a good working relationship with the managers who will let me know when people are leaving. And I've worked at CIC for 19 years, so people come to me and let me know people are leaving, and I can try and have those stay conversations. So we're really lucky. We're a really small area, but it does work in some areas, just to say. Thanks.
Brilliant. Thank you, Denise. So thank you everybody for attending today's session. Just a little reminder, there is a link to be able to give your feedback in the chat, which would be wonderful to hear from you all. And if you've got any ideas for any future sessions as well. Our next Lunch and Learn session is going to be on the 16th of June at 1 p.m. Where we will be joined by Karen Dutton, who's going to be talking about the Let's Talk Bereavement project that's been running for a couple of years now. So she's going to give us a bit of an update on how that's going. I'll pop a link to the session in the chat in a moment. So we hope to see you all there. So once again, thank you so much to Anne for sharing that and hearing about the fantastic work that's going on. Really do appreciate that. And I hope everybody enjoys the rest of their afternoon. Thank you everybody for attending.